The auction block stank of oil and desperation. I kept my hood low, my face hidden in shadow as the auctioneer dragged the next lot onto the platform. Station Cathara floated in the void between star systems, a forgotten mining outpost turned black market haven. Nobody asked questions here. Nobody cared who you were or what you'd done. Perfect for a man like me. Lot 17, the auctioneer barked, his 3 eyes scanning the crowd. Female, Zanari species, conquered world. Good for labor, breeding, whatever you need. The crowd barely looked up. Zanari were common now, their homeworld reduced to ash by the Dominion 5 years back. I should have ignored her too. Should have kept searching for the cheap maintenance droid I came for. But when they yanked her into the light, something made me look. She didn't lower her eyes. Every other slave on that block had stared at the floor, broken and hollow. Not her. She stood tall despite the chains, her silver skin marked with scars, her black eyes blazing with pure hatred. The auctioneer struck her across the face for her defiance. She spat blood at his feet. 15 credits, someone called lazily. 16, another voice drawled. I should have walked away. I had 20 credits to my name. Barely enough to fuel my ship and buy supplies. But those eyes, that fire, it reminded me of something I thought died 30 years ago. 20 credits, I heard myself say. The crowd turned. The auctioneer's eyes widened. 20 credits for a slave was insulting, but nobody wanted to bid higher on damaged goods. She'd probably kill her owner within a week. Sold to the hooded buyer. Collect your property at the holding bay. I moved through the crowd, my heart pounding. Stupid, reckless. I couldn't afford this, but I couldn't stop my feet from carrying me forward. At the holding bay, they shoved her toward me, still chained. I reached for the control chip they handed over, the device that would let me command her, punish her, control every aspect of her existence. Instead, I crushed it under my boot. She stared at me. "What are you doing?" "Leaving," I said, unlocking her chains. They clattered to the floor. "You're free. Go." "Free?" She rubbed her wrists, confusion and suspicion warring in her expression. "Why? Does it matter?" Before she could answer, alarms shrieked through the station. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson. The intercom crackled to life. "Containment breach! Human detected in Sector 7. All units respond." Repeat, human detected. My blood turned to ice. Someone had scanned me. Someone new. "Human?" The woman Zara stared at me with new eyes. "You're human, but they're extinct. Earth was destroyed. Not all of us," I said, pulling my blaster. "And right now, that's a death sentence. The Dominion wants humanity erased from history. Every last one." Footsteps thundered down the corridor. Heavy boots, military-grade weapons charging up. I had seconds. "Run," I told Zara. "Different direction. They want me, not you." She didn't run. Instead, she grabbed a guard's shock baton from the wall mount. "Which way to your ship? You don't have to. Shut up and move." We ran. The station's corridors blurred past as security forces converged. I fired behind us, dropping 2 guards. Zara moved like liquid death, the shock baton crackling as she struck with surgical precision. She'd been a soldier once. That much was clear. "Left," I gasped, my lungs burning. My ship, a battered cargo hauler called the Drift Runner, sat in docking bay 12, just another 100 meters. Energy bolts seared past my head. I returned fire, giving Zara cover as she sprinted ahead. She reached the bay door controls and slammed her fist into the override. The door ground open slowly. Too slowly. "Go!" she shouted. I dove through the gap. She followed, sliding beneath just as a bolt scorched the wall where her head had been. Together we raced across the bay toward my ship. Behind us, the door exploded inward. Dozens of soldiers poured through. The Drift Runner's ramp lowered. We scrambled inside. I made it to the cockpit and fired the engines before I'd even strapped in. The ship lurched forward, tearing free of the docking clamps. Alarms screamed. Station defense cannons swiveled toward us. "Hold on," I said, punching the throttle. The Drift Runner shot forward. Cannon fire tore through the space we'd just occupied. I twisted the ship into a spiral, ducking between cargo containers and station infrastructure. One shot clipped our shields, sending sparks flying from the console. "Hyperspace now would be good," Zara said through gritted teeth, gripping the co-pilot's seat. "Navigation's calculating." I watched the display as pursuit ships launched from Cathara. 3, no, 4, all faster than my hauler. Come on. The computer beeped. Coordinates locked. I pulled the hyperspace lever. Reality stretched, twisted, and snapped. The stars became lines, then vanished into the blue-white tunnel of faster-than-light travel. We were safe. For now. I slumped in my seat, hands shaking. I was too close. Way too close. "Thank you," I said to Zara. "You didn't have to help." She stared out at the hyperspace tunnel, her expression unreadable. "You freed me. I repaid the debt. You don't owe me anything. Everyone owes something." She turned those black eyes on me. "Why did you free me?" "The truth." I was quiet for a long moment. "Your eyes. The way you looked at them. You reminded me of us. Of humanity. Before they destroyed your world." I nodded. 30 years ago. I was off-planet when it happened, working on a mining crew. Came back to find Earth burning. The Dominion said humanity was too dangerous, too warlike, too unpredictable. They glassed the whole planet in a day. Killed 9 billion people. Zara's jaw tightened. My world fell 5 years ago. The Zanari refused to join the Dominion. They said we were too proud, too independent, so they made an example of us. Her voice cracked. I was in the resistance. We fought for 3 years. In the end, there were 12 of us left. Then 6. I'm sorry. Don't be. Sorry doesn't bring them back. She looked at her hands. I was captured during the final assault. Sold. Passed from owner to owner. I lost count after the 7th. We sat in silence, 2 survivors of dead civilizations, hurtling through the void. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Honestly, I don't know. I've been drifting for years, taking odd jobs, staying hidden." She raised an eyebrow. "Hidden? You just exposed yourself on a slave station." I laughed bitterly. Not my smartest move. The hyperspace timer showed 6 hours until we dropped back into normal space. I needed rest, needed to think, needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do now that the Dominion knew I existed. I showed Zara to the small cargo bay that served as passenger quarters. "You can sleep here. There's rations in the storage locker. Help yourself. Where will you be?" "Cockpit. Someone needs to watch for trouble." She nodded, then caught my arm as I turned to leave. "What's your name?" "You freed me, and I don't even know what to call you." "Kyle." "Kyle Morrison." "Zara Venn." "And Kyle, that thing you said about me reminding you of humanity?" Her grip tightened. "You still have that fire too. You just forgot." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded and laughed. In the cockpit, I pulled up the ship's navigation logs. I'd been running weapons to resistance cells for the last 2 years. Small groups fighting the Dominion on the edges of their empire. Dangerous work, but it paid well and let me strike back, even if only in small ways. But now they knew I was human. They'd be hunting me actively. The computer beeped. Incoming message on an encrypted channel. I almost ignored it, but the encryption signature belonged to one of my regular contacts. I opened the transmission. A desperate voice crackled through. "This is Colony Refuge. We're under attack. Dominion fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're bombing from orbit. We have civilians, children. If anyone can hear this, please. We need help. We need..." The transmission cut to static. Colony Refuge. I knew it. A hidden settlement on an uncharted moon. Home to refugees from a dozen conquered species. 3,000 people, maybe more. All of them running from the Dominion. I could ignore it, change course, disappear into the outer rim, and never look back. But Zara's words echoed in my mind. "You still have that fire too, you just forgot." I pulled up the colony's coordinates. 8 hours away, at maximum speed. By the time I arrived, they'd likely be dead. Going there was suicide. "You're thinking about helping them." I spun. Zara stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You should be resting. I heard the transmission. She walked to the co-pilot's seat. You're considering it. It's a Dominion fleet. I have a cargo hauler with barely functional shields. What exactly do you think I can do? I don't know, but I know you're not going to run. You don't know me. Don't I? She leaned forward. You spent your last 20 credits to free a stranger. You helped me escape when you could have left me behind. You've been running guns to resistance fighters for years. You're not a runner, Kyle. You just pretend to be one. And what are you? I shot back. Another survivor playing it safe? Her eyes flashed. I was a soldier, a warrior. I fought until there was no one left to fight for. And then they broke me, made me a slave. You gave me back my body, Kyle. But I'm still in chains. Chains of fear, of loss, of wondering if fighting even matters anymore. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe we both need to stop running. Maybe we need to stand for something again, even if it costs us everything. I looked at the distress coordinates, then back at her. You understand we'll probably die. I've been dead for 5 years. At least this way it'll mean something. I made my decision. My hands moved across the controls, plotting a new course. Strap in. We're gonna need every bit of speed this ship has. Zara smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Colony Refuge's system. What I saw made my stomach drop. 3 Dominion warships hung in orbit around the moon, their weapons platforms firing methodically at the surface. Explosions bloomed across the colony like deadly flowers. Escape pods launched desperately, only to be picked off by fighter craft. They're slaughtering them, Zara whispered. My hands clenched the controls. 3 warships. I had 1 cargo hauler with a single forward plasma cannon that could barely punch through civilian-grade shielding. There has to be something we can do, Zara said. I ran the numbers in my head. Conventional tactics wouldn't work. I was outgunned, outmanned, outmatched in every way. But humans hadn't survived as long as we did by fighting fair. Humans have a saying, I told Zara. If you can't fight harder, fight smarter. I opened the ship's manifest. Weapons I'd been running to resistance cells. Plasma charges, electromagnetic pulse grenades, mining explosives, and in the reactor core enough unstable fuel to power a small city or create one hell of an explosion. An idea formed. Insane. Reckless. Exactly what the Dominion wouldn't expect. I need you to do exactly what I say, I told Zara. No questions. What's the plan? We're going to give them a fight they'll never forget. I gunned the engines, sending the drift runners screaming toward the nearest warship. Immediately their sensors locked onto us. Fighter craft peeled away from the colony to intercept. Transferring all power to forward shields? I said, my fingers flying across the console. And opening cargo bay doors. What? We'll decompress. That's the idea. Grab that emergency suit. The fighters opened fire. Energy bolts hammered our shields. I twisted the ship through evasive patterns, buying seconds. The cargo bay doors groaned open. Everything not bolted down was sucked into space, including the weapons crates. They think we're dumping cargo to run faster, Zara said, understanding dawning. Right, but those aren't empty crates. I activated the remote detonators. The floating weapons crates exploded in a chain reaction, creating a field of shrapnel and plasma fire. 2 fighters flew directly into it and disintegrated. The others broke off, regrouping. I used those precious seconds to close the distance to the warship. Its point defense cannon swiveled toward us. This is going to be rough, I warned. The cannons opened fire. I pushed the drift runner into a barrel roll, spiraling between the streams of fire. 1 bolt clipped our stern, sending us spinning. I corrected, bringing us alongside the warship's hull. Launching EMP grenades, I said, dumping the entire payload against their hull. The grenades detonated in brilliant blue flashes. The warship's shields flickered and died. Their weapons systems went dark. I'd bought us maybe 30 seconds before their backups kicked in. Now the mining charges, Zara said, catching on. Now the mining charges. I flew along the warship's length, magnetic launchers firing charges directly against their hull. Each one latched on with an electromagnet, armed and ready. "Get to the escape pod," I told Zara. "What about you? Someone needs to pilot. Go. Kyle, go." She ran. I heard the pod bay door open. The warship's systems were coming back online. Their shields began to regenerate. I had seconds. I armed every mining charge simultaneously and yanked the ship away. Throttle at maximum. The warship's cannons opened fire, tearing through my failing shields. Alarm screamed. Hull breach warnings flashed red. Then the charges detonated. The explosion tore through the warship's hull in a dozen places. Secondary explosions rippled through their interior as the blasts reached fuel lines and ammunition stores. The massive ship listed, atmosphere venting, fires raging through its corridors. 1 down, 2 to go. But my ship was dying. Shields gone. Hull compromised. Engines failing. The other 2 warships were turning toward me, all weapons hot. The pod bay door was still open. Zara hadn't launched. "What are you doing?" I shouted into the intercom. "Get out of here. Not without you." No time to argue. The warships opened fire. I pushed the drift runner into one final maneuver, using the last of my engine power to position the ship between the colony and the incoming fire. My hull took the hits meant for the escaping civilian transports. The ship shuddered. Something critical exploded below decks. I was going to die, but at least the colonists would have a chance. Then Zara was in the cockpit, grabbing my arm. "Move! The ship is already dead. Come on!" We ran. Behind us, the cockpit exploded in flames. We reached the escape pod and threw ourselves inside just as the corridor collapsed. Zara slammed the launch button. The pod shot away from the drift runner. Through the viewport, I watched my ship, my home for 15 years, break apart under sustained fire. Debris scattered across the void. But the colony transports were escaping. Dozens of them, racing for the outer system and the safety of hyperspace. "We bought them time," Zara said softly. "Not enough." I pointed at the 2 remaining warships. They were repositioning, preparing to pursue the transports. The pod drifted, powerless, forgotten in the chaos. I felt hollow. We'd tried, we'd failed. Then something changed. On the edge of my sensors, new contacts appeared. Ships dropping out of hyperspace. Dozens of them. Small fighters, converted freighters, even a few military-grade cruisers from species I'd supplied with weapons over the years. "The Resistance," I breathed. They heard the distress call. The new arrivals hit the Dominion warships in a coordinated strike. It wasn't a fair fight. They were still outgunned, but there were enough of them to make a difference. Energy fire crisscrossed space. Explosions lit the void. And slowly, impossibly, the Dominion ships began to retreat. They jumped to hyperspace, leaving the system to the Resistance fleet. A transport ship pulled alongside our pod. The docking tube extended. Someone opened the hatch, and hands pulled us through into warmth and safety. The transport's captain, a grizzled alien with 4 arms, stared at me in disbelief. "You're human. Actually human. Last time I checked. We thought you were all dead. We thought..." He shook his head. "You saved us. That crazy attack bought us the time we needed. I just did what I could. You did more than that." He gestured to the viewport. Colony ships were gathering, forming a convoy. 3,000 people are alive because you didn't run. Because you chose to fight. The next few hours were a blur. Medical treatment for minor injuries. Questions from grateful colonists. Children staring at me with wide eyes, having never seen a human before. Zara stayed close, still processing everything. Finally, we found a quiet corner in the transport's common area. "You were right," I told her. "I needed to stop running. We both did." She looked at her hands. "For 5 years, I've been a ghost, going through the motions of survival but not really living. Today, I felt alive again, even though we almost died, especially because we almost died." She smiled. "You gave me back more than my freedom today, Kyle. You reminded me who I used to be, who I can still be." A colonist approached, hesitant. "Excuse me, are you Kyle Morrison?" "Yes." Word spreading. About a human who fought the Dominion, who stood when he could have run. People are talking. The resistance is talking. They want to know if it's true. I glanced at Zara. She nodded encouragement. It's true, I said. And I'm not hiding anymore. The colonist's eyes shone with hope. Then the Dominion lied. Humanity isn't extinct. You're still fighting. One of me, anyway. One is enough to start. The colonist left, already speaking urgently into a communicator. Zara leaned back. You realize what you just did? You've made yourself a symbol. Every species the Dominion has conquered will hear about this, about the last human who refused to die quietly. That's terrifying. That's hope. She looked at me seriously. 20 credits. That's what you paid for my freedom. A pittance. An insult. But you know what you really bought? What? This moment. This choice. The chance to matter again. She gestured at the window, at the fleet of rescued ships. 3,000 lives. A dozen resistance cells inspired to keep fighting. The knowledge that humanity still resists. You can't put a price on that. She was right. I'd spent 30 years running, hiding, surviving but not living. I'd convinced myself I was protecting the memory of my species by staying invisible. But I'd been wrong. Humanity had never been about hiding. We'd been about standing up, fighting back, refusing to quit even when the odds were impossible. So what now? I asked. Now we fight. For everyone who can't fight for themselves. For my people. For yours. For everyone who refuses to bow to the Dominion. I don't even have a ship anymore. We'll find one. The resistance will help. They need us. Need what we represent. She held out her hand. Partners? I took it. Partners. The transport ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying us toward an uncertain future. But for the first time in 30 years, I felt something I thought was dead. Hope. Purpose. The knowledge that I wasn't alone. 20 credits had seemed like everything I had. But it had bought me something infinitely more valuable. It had bought me a reason to stop running. A partner who understood. A cause worth dying for, which meant it was worth living for, too. The Dominion thought they'd erased humanity, but they'd only scattered us. And now, slowly, we were coming back. Not to reclaim what was lost, but to build something new. Something that would stand against tyranny wherever it appeared. I looked at Zara, this fierce warrior who'd survived the unsurvivable, and I knew we'd face whatever came next together. Some things really were priceless. Freedom was one of them, and I'd just learned that freedom wasn't just about breaking chains. It was about choosing to stand when you could run, to fight when you could hide, to hope when despair seemed easier. 20 credits, the best investment I ever made. Outside, the stars streamed past in hyperspace, and ahead of us, a galaxy waited. A galaxy that needed to learn that humanity wasn't finished yet. That we'd fight for every single person who'd been beaten down, enslaved, or erased. That we'd stand with anyone brave enough to resist. The Dominion had made one critical mistake. They'd left survivors, and survivors had a way of becoming something much more dangerous. They became hope, and hope, once kindled, was impossible to extinguish.